When it comes to photography, and that includes phones, preference is going to matter. But I will be fair. When it comes to the battle between the OnePlus 13 and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, it's probably not going to be very kind for the OnePlus 12. Either way, let's find out how the OnePlus 13 stacks up against the Xiaomi 14 Ultra in daytime photography. We're gonna do a low light video, but that's gonna be separate because else these videos will be way too long for you guys to watch. The battle between the OnePlus 13 and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra, like any other, is going to a degree come down to preference. And like always, preference is going to matter. So while I might make some comments about what my preference is, it's simply that, my preference. So let's start with the main sensor. And here there are so many takes straight away. Now the snow is a bit inconsistent with the speed it was going because of the changing winds around here. But do see how the OnePlus 13 manages to capture a good amount of snow here, where with the 14 Ultra there are streaks of snow, meaning a faster shutter speed on the OnePlus. That being said, the OnePlus has a lot of artificial sharpening going on in the shot itself. I think a combination between the both would be good because color wise they are pretty close to each other. Here the colors in parts are similar again, but the feeling of the scene is far nicer on the Xiaomi for me. It has a feeling of cold, that feeling of snow. Where with the OnePlus, the sharpening in the shot is a real problem for me. It is so much that it really affects the shot itself and it lacks depth in comparison to the Xiaomi. Now in this fountain shot, of course being empty because of the upcoming colder temperatures, the Xiaomi has a good amount of contrast between everything. There's a bit more pop to the gold itself and it gives a little bit more depth to the shot. But with the OnePlus again we have too much sharpening in comparison, but I do think that the colors by itself look fine. I would even say I like the gold color a little bit better on the OnePlus 13. Now this shot is all about mood. With the OnePlus though, I feel like there's too much light hitting the wall itself. It's too well exposed over the entirety of the shot, making it look a lot flatter in comparison to what you get on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. And now of course we go inside the palace properly, and again this is such a beautiful place. Now while colors are comparable between these two, there's a tad more saturation on the OnePlus, and in terms of feeling it isn't really close. The OnePlus is too balanced with exposure again, removing a lot of depth in the shot itself, and while it isn't as sharp as some other shots that you will see, it still has a little bit too much sharpening going on the OnePlus. And while I think that the OnePlus 13 does do well here, I think it struggles with a good color balance. Look at for instance this shot. The deep red, almost purple bed seems to affect the shot around it. It adds a lot of saturation, but also affects the colors on the ground and the ceiling itself. With the Xiaomi 14 Ultra it doesn't do that. It doesn't over sharpen like the OnePlus does as well. Again, the soul is far better preserved on the Xiaomi here. And this is one of the main reasons why I don't like over sharpening. It can truly affect the feel of the shot itself, and adding sharpening is much easier than removing it. Good luck trying that. And in these shots I will also say it removes the coziness, the comfort of the bed itself. That feels much harder on the OnePlus. In general, when looking at these two side by side, the OnePlus has moments where it does well, and I think the colors has a lot of potential when it comes to this OnePlus 13. With yes, some moments where it clearly falters with the white balance, but in turn I think it does well in terms of colors in general. It's just the sharpening and trying to get everything lit up that ruins shots like this for me. It removes the depth in the shot in comparison to what you get on the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. It loses out in terms of the soul of the shot itself. While I think it has potential, it clearly needs some work at the moment to really fight a battle like this, especially when it comes to that sharpening and trying to lit up every single corner of the shot itself to try to get it as balanced as possible. 4K, 30 and 60 frames per second on both. I really hope I don't get that jitter. The screen color's a little bit close on OnePlus, but it's really clean between. Ultrawide. First 5. Let's go to 6 as well on this one. See the difference in color you would 6 times zoom. Okay, 60 frames per second. Both nice and snowy. Sadly, it's quite snowing, so most of it doesn't stick, but it's beside the point. Color-wise, it's hard to say on the screen itself. I think OnePlus is a bit closer, but I liked a little bit warmer hue on Xiaomi. Now when it comes to the OnePlus 13 in this case, I am not using master mode in this because I want to showcase auto versus auto. When it comes to using pro mode, you're going to have to play a lot around with different settings and you're going to get a different perspective of how both of these perform automatically. So that's why I'm using auto mode and also not master mode when it comes to, of course, the OnePlus 13. To showcase just purely that, because if you want to see how master mode performs, I've already done a video on that one. And now on to the ultra-wide and a quick look at the specifications, because it will make it clear where the composition will be different between these two. While both share a 50 megapixel resolution, the OnePlus 13 has an f-stop of 2.0 and 15mm equivalent focal length, where the Xiaomi has an f-stop of 1.8 and a much wider 12mm equivalent focal length. This will result in wider and more dramatic ultra-wide shots, of course. Something I have no control over. With that out of the way, let's showcase the differences between the OnePlus 13 and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra in ultra-wide. Now with this first shot, you can see how much wider the shot itself straight away. And color-wise again, very similar between the two. With of course the over-sharpening we can see on the main sensor as well with the OnePlus 13. Zooming in as well, you can see that more sharpening effect that has it compared to the Xiaomi. Both though very similar in detail. Now with this shot we basically repeat what I've been saying on the main sensor as well and the previous shot. With colors being more true to life to Xiaomi apart from the pebbles. The feeling also is much better on the Xiaomi for me. It is snowy and that effect is there on the Xiaomi where it isn't on the OnePlus. Which is very clear on the background. It has that haze effect to it that the OnePlus simply misses out on, and that's probably down to it over sharpening. And of course trying to balance the shot way too well with the light itself. Now last one outside. Quality wise again very similar in terms of detail, with of course the sharpening again on the OnePlus. But of course with the Xiaomi, just like the previous ones, zooming in 50% on the OnePlus and 90% on the Xiaomi to make the composition a bit of the same and showcasing the differences close up. Now here we are, finally inside, and yes, the ultra-wide is going to have some clear difference visible. It allows for a more dramatic effect because of the wider effect that we get on the Xiaomi. Again though, color-wise they can be pretty similar. Depending on the shot itself, it just fluctuates a little bit. But over-sharpening comes to play here again, especially inside. And realistically, that is mostly what I have to say here when it comes to the ultra-wide part of this comparison. Details are pretty similar. But the Xiaomi has far more soul to the shot and of course way less sharpening than the OnePlus, where for me to a degree it ruins the image. It makes the shot more aggressive, where in this kind of shot you don't really want that. It doesn't help with the feeling of the shot itself to have this kind of over sharpening. Now in master mode you can cool that down, but of course this is a comparison between auto and auto where the Xiaomi is on authentic. I will say though that there are cases where the OnePlus does a good amount better in dynamic range. It isn't always the case, but there are moments like this one where it definitely does better than the Xiaomi, which of course isn't known for the best dynamic range, but it does help out in some shots to get that feel that the OnePlus lacks in comparison. But realistically, if the OnePlus cools down on the over sharpening that is happening, especially with the ultra-wide and inside shots, and not trying to balance the light way too much so you get a more flat image, I think it has a lot of potential in capturing that essence of the shot as well. Before we dive into showcasing the difference in terms of zoom, let's compare a little bit of the specifications because they actually matter here. The Xiaomi 14 Ultra actually comes with two different focal lengths for zooming in. We have a 50 megapixel sensor telephoto, which is the floating lens we will discuss in a separate category in a bit as well. That's a 75mm equivalent zoom level. And just like the periscope, it has a 1/2.51 inch sensor size and an f-stop of 1.8. We then have the periscope, which also has a 50 megapixel resolution, but 120mm equivalent in terms of focal length with an f-stop of 2.5. Then when looking at the OnePlus, we have one periscope telephoto. It's a 50 megapixel sensor with an f-stop of 2.6 and a larger 1/1.95 inch sensor size. However, that is kept at 73mm, meaning anything beyond that is digital crop, and that will come to play. Now with this first shot, of course, you can straight away see a big difference when zooming in more than that 73mm. The man is much more detailed, as well as the buildings on the background and everything around it, where the OnePlus is struggling a lot more. Looking at it from a full perspective, I think both shots are fine though. With this second shot, of course, naturally a lot of oversharpening happening with the OnePlus, and that happens a lot with their sensors. And that part always comes down to preference. For myself, I naturally do not prefer it, as you guys know. Zooming in shows a lot more of that sharpening that you can see on that OnePlus. If we now step it up back to that 144mm and 146mm for both, you can see a big difference again. The digital crop, and yes, the Xiaomi has a bit of that as well, so I can make both of them 6 times for this comparison and have a similar composition, is a lot better than the OnePlus. Details are far better preserved, and that's far more noticeable when cropping into both shots. A lot of detail is retained on the Xiaomi, where on the OnePlus it lacks that in comparison. Again though, looking at the shot full here, apart from the feel that is much more reflective of reality on the Xiaomi, I think that the OnePlus 13 looks fine. If you like that sharpening and a more flat but balanced light exposure, then yeah, the OnePlus does well. But if you want to crop into the shot itself and use it like that, it realistically isn't close between the two, with far more better details on the Xiaomi naturally. There are a lot of situations where we compare the differences between the two and show basically the OnePlus going past at 73mm. That doesn't stand a chance against the likes of the Xiaomi. And that is putting aside that the Xiaomi captures the feeling of the scene much better in comparison to the OnePlus. But we do have to keep in mind, looking at these two, while the Xiaomi 14 Ultra has gone down in price, you probably could pick it up at the same price second hand as the OnePlus 13. But when you do new versus new, you pay a lot less for the OnePlus. With the release of the Xiaomi 14 Ultra being around 1299 from memory, for the OnePlus 13 I paid €800. Now the question becomes, do you feel like in terms of just quality of zoom, is it worth that much more? That's something you can only answer for yourself. For me, naturally it comes more down to the way that the shots are approached. And in terms of that, while the OnePlus has some moments getting close in terms of colors, it lacks that feeling that Xiaomi is simply the best in, where realistically all phones, in my opinion, lose against when it comes to the Xiaomi. Sure, from a technical standpoint, Xiaomi has some things that they need to work at, and honestly, compared to the 13, it still loses out in some cases. But when it comes to that feeling, right now, Xiaomi is simply at the top of the game itself. Cannot express enough how much the telephoto is a downsize when it comes to what we got on the OnePlus versus something like the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Look how beautiful I can get this shot. The really nice bokeh in the background. Those things are simply not possible with the OnePlus 13 because it doesn't have a telephoto with a good focal minimum focal distance. It makes no sense to me. So the OnePlus 13 versus the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. I think in general it's an interesting battle because simply put, you're paying quite a bit less for the OnePlus 13, and therefore a battle like this can tell you a story about whether you should spend that amount more on a phone like that. And I think there it's something that only you can answer and not necessarily me. When it comes to style, yes, my preference is Xiaomi because I like the way that they approach the photography. But if you do like sharper images with a bit more saturation and losing a bit of that soul in the shot itself, I think the OnePlus 13 does do well. I think in general it gets quite close in some cases with the colors as well. And when it comes to the ultra-wide, it can win in dynamic range. So that's not a very hard challenge to beat. Because let's be fair, Xiaomi hasn't been the greatest in that anyway. When it comes to portrait mode, again, there are limitations here when it comes to testing. I am the subject and it's not a very interesting subject, and I have no control, well, very little control over the composition because I cannot see what I'm doing. But when it comes to portrait, Xiaomi isn't that good. Xiaomi hasn't been that good. And I think there it is really one of the weaknesses for Xiaomi, that portrait. I feel like yes, in terms of depth it does do well, in terms of stages of the depth it does do well, but when it comes to the skin tone and the skin color, there it definitely needs work, and it still does. Either way, what do you think about this battle between the OnePlus 13 and the Xiaomi 14 Ultra? Let me know in the comments below, and let me know if basically the zoom difference is worth the $500-ish difference for you when it comes to the OnePlus 13 versus the Xiaomi 14 Ultra. Either way, I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and yes, low light will be in progress, but these shots take a while to get, and of course I have to edit everything, and of course I do my 3D work next to it and some other work in between. So there are limitations in time. And also, if I put low light in this video, it will be about 40 minutes. Either way, hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe and everything. And of course, as always, I also really want to thank my members. I really appreciate the support. And of course, you can become a member as well by clicking join below. But you don't have to. It does help out a channel like mine. But also commenting, liking and subscribing with the bell icon if you aren't yet also helps out. Either way, hope you enjoyed, and talk to you guys in the next.